I know they're watching me right now, and they're mad at me.
Who's they?
Terrence Howard is sharing powerful knowledge that the world's elite would prefer to keep hidden, revealing secrets about the fundamental nature of the universe and life that challenge conventional understanding and control.
There's a particular song, a scale, in the genomes for each and every one of us. Now, when that song is played, when your particular prime resonant frequency is played, guess what happens? Your DNA celebrates and tightens. Everything else gets pushed out.
This is the truth that every human being needs to know in order to be able to take care of their family and teach them properly.
The knowledge he's sharing puts him at risk because some people do not want it to be released. Despite these risks, he has decided to make it public. This helps us move towards being a level 1 civilization. This means using the Earth's resources in a way that is good for both the planet and the people living on it. He also talks about reaching higher levels of civilization, levels 2, 3, and 4. At these levels, people could travel and see different parts of the universe. To reach these levels, we need the tools Terrence provides and ways of thinking that help us predict and manage the natural world around us. This knowledge acts like a map, helping us understand the secret of the universe and improve how we live and interact with everything around us.
You're able to produce your own energy. You're able to sustain and coexist with our environment. You're able to, like I said, become a level 1 civilization and utilize all of the resources of the earth and benefit the earth and the creatures of the earth at the same time. So cosmically, karmically, that's a wonderful place. But you get to level 2, level 3, level 4, and being able to now visit and travel and experience other parts of the universe as a result of utilizing these truths and these tools to guide you in understanding universal fundamentals and functions. That's all these are. These are new tools, to being able to predict and describe how things are going to react and what pressure condition you'll be in and how you might need to mitigate that pressure condition that might be inconsistent with you maintaining your homeostasis.
Terrence Howard is explaining a new way to potentially prevent diseases by adjusting our DNA, which is made up of elements like hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and oxygen. These elements form a structure known as the double helix, which looks a bit like a twisted ladder. Normally, our bodies are thought to communicate internally through electrical signals, but Terrence suggests it's actually through vibrations or frequencies that each element in our DNA can emit. He relates this to how a particular song at a party can trigger memories and emotions from years ago, suggesting that similar to how music affects us, certain frequencies can influence how our DNA behaves. For example, if the right frequency reaches our DNA, it can tighten up in a way that pushes out problems and keeps it functioning correctly. Terrence mentions working on a device called a harmonic wave sequencer with another doctor to use these principles for healing, using just the right frequencies to keep our bodies healthy without invasive treatments. They believe this approach could even help cure serious diseases like AIDS and cancer by simply tuning into the DNA's correct frequency, much like tuning an instrument to the right pitch. He explains the whole concept to Harvard students. Have a look.
How do you propose that this resequencing would actually recode people's genetics in order to prevent them from getting these elements?
Simple. Our DNA is made up of what? 5 elements, right? Hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and oxygen. Do you know how they're arranged? The phosphorus sits right here in the middle, and you've got 4 oxygen atoms surrounding it. Then there's another phosphorus, 2 more oxygen atoms. Now these are the legs of that double helix. These are the legs. Now, the latter steps on it, they become the adenine, the guanine, the cytosine, and thymine, the ATCGs. It turns out hydrogen, the body transferred or understood the energy information through electricity. They're finding out it's through frequency. Well, guess what hydrogen sounds like? It's a key of E, and it's the color yellow. That's what proper physics gets you to. Oxygen is a chartreuse, and it's the key of F over F sharp. Information used to be thought about as just electrical information passing on. But I've got a question for you. Have you ever been at a party with some of your friends you ain't seen in 10 years, but y'all was like 14, you hung out and there's a song that came on and you was like, "Ugh," and everybody got up and was live at that moment. Now say 10 years later you got a friend with you. He's a good guy, but he wasn't there when me and my boys formed this. So when that song comes on, our DNA tightens. There's a particular song, a scale, in the genomes for each and every one of us. Now, when that song is played, when your particular prime resonant frequency is played, guess what happens? Your DNA celebrates and tightens. Everything else gets pushed out. Harmonic wave resequencing.
Furthermore, he explains how different elements in our DNA can be likened to musical notes and colors. For example, carbon is akin to the musical note E and is associated with the color yellow, while nitrogen corresponds to the note G. He explains that these elements together create a kind of song within our DNA. Imagine a piano, where each key is supposed to hit a specific note. If a different note plays unexpectedly like an F instead of an F sharp, it's like hitting the wrong key. This mismatch can cause a chain reaction, similar to a row of dominoes falling incorrectly. This is what he means when he says the domino doesn't fall right, leading to issues or malformations in the DNA structure. However, if the correct song or frequency is played, that is, when everything aligns perfectly as it should, our DNA tightens up and functions correctly, pushing out any errors. Terrence suggests that we don't need to resort to invasive methods to fix DNA errors. Instead, we can use specific frequencies to correct them, much like tuning an instrument to ensure it plays the right notes. If you're wondering how to find the color of a particular sound, here's the explanation.
Sound wave has the same dance that a light wave has. It's just the sound, one is longer and one is shorter. If you want to know the color of a particular sound, you take its frequency and you keep doubling it until you get into the visual spectrum. Wow. And then you'll have the color. If you want to know what a color sounds like, you keep dividing it by 2 until you get into the audible section, and then you'll understand it.
To better understand what Terrence Howard is explaining, we need to explore the concepts of the visual and audible spectrums, as well as how sound and light waves relate to each other in terms of frequency. The visual spectrum is part of the electromagnetic spectrum and is visible to the human eye. It ranges from violet, with shorter wavelengths, to red, with longer wavelengths. Each color in the visual spectrum corresponds to a specific wavelength of light. For example, violet light has a wavelength of about 400 nanometers, and red light has a wavelength of about 700 nanometers. The audible spectrum refers to the range of sound frequencies that the human ear can hear, typically from about 20 Hz, very low-pitched sounds, to 20,000 Hz, very high-pitched sounds. Each frequency within this range corresponds to a different pitch of sound. If you have a sound and you want to find out what color it corresponds to, you increase the frequency of the sound by doubling it repeatedly until it reaches a frequency within the range of the visual spectrum. This process doesn't literally turn sound into light, but uses the concept of frequency doubling to theoretically align a sound's frequency with the frequency of light or color. If you start with a sound frequency of 440 Hz, a standard A note, and keep doubling it, 440 Hz to 880 Hz to 1760 Hz and so forth, you'll eventually reach a frequency that aligns with light in the visual spectrum. Conversely, starting with a color, you halve its frequency repeatedly until it matches a sound in the audible spectrum. This theoretical method allows you to link a specific sound pitch with a color. Hydrogen, the simplest and most abundant element in the universe, serves as a fundamental building block or template for all matter. Its simplicity lies in having just one proton and one electron, yet it accounts for about 99% of the universe's visible matter. By thoroughly understanding hydrogen's properties and behaviors, we gain insight into the very foundation of existence. This includes the processes of life and death, which are deeply intertwined with the transformations of matter and energy. Terrence speaks about decoding hydrogen. He refers to uncovering its fundamental characteristics, such as how it behaves under different conditions, how it interacts with other elements, and how it participates in chemical reactions. These insights could potentially reveal the underlying principles of the universe.
You got to remember, this is the geometry of hydrogen itself. 99% of the universe is made up of hydrogen. So if we have the template for hydrogen, we have the template for reality and all the things that come with it, and that means life and death. So we can extend this existence. We can heal the diseases. We can heal, we can live till time indefinite. Every element goes through the transition and comes out the other side. There's only 7 elements, 7 tones for the most part, because all of the elements occur between the pressure conditions of 2 noble gases squeezing on each other. So in the carbon octave, where they squeeze themselves all the way up, you start with lithium, beryllium, boron. Then you have carbon, which is a plus and minus 4. You know, it's both male and female because you're getting hit from both sides. It has a double tone. Then it goes to nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. Fluorine, now it goes through the noble gas. Now fluorine comes out, and now it is sodium.
This cycle of transformation can be metaphorically linked to the act of breathing. Inhaling represents a masculine, charging action that brings energy into a system, while exhaling represents a feminine, discharging action that releases energy and expands the system. This balance of inhaling and exhaling mirrors the cyclical nature of life, where masculine and feminine energies are in constant flux, maintaining equilibrium.
When you breathing in is a masculine thing, a charging of the system, you know, as Walter Russell said. Breathing out is a feminine expanding of a system, a discharging of the system. You never breathe in twice without breathing out once. We know this isn't our first lifetime here. We've all felt that we've been here forever. Can you remember not existing? But do you think you've been a woman in every lifetime? That wouldn't be fair. But it would make sense if you're masculine male in this lifetime, the next life you become feminine. You're a woman. Come back to male. Breathing in, breathing out. That equanimity will allow for karma to take place. Whatever I've done to women in this life, it's done to me in the next one.
Biologically, this balance manifests in the aging process where hormonal changes occur. For example, as men age, their bodies may produce more estrogen, leading to traits typically associated with femininity, such as increased nurturing behavior. Conversely, women may produce more testosterone, leading to increased assertiveness. These shifts reflect the interconnectedness of all living things and the continuous cycle of transformation and balance.
What happens biologically? You know, the male's body stop producing the testosterone, produces more estrogen, start growing boobs, become less aggressive and more understanding. The woman, what is she doing? She's slowly coming up to being more masculine, start actually growing little beards and all of that stuff. She's the prostate, which is the same exact tissue that is in the uterus. When the testosterone level drops, guess what? The estrogen level rises, the prostate, what does the uterus do every month? It sheds. It grows and it sheds. So what happens to the prostate? It starts trying to swell because it's being influenced by the estrogen. The testes go back up and become ovaries. The ovaries drop down and become testes. It's just a cycle of going, breathing in, breathing out. The universal breath.
Terrence explained this profound concept during a speech at Harvard, captivating the audience with his insights into the everything expands and everything contracts principle.
Everything expands and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometries. Everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in geometry and fits. There's no sense of death. Everything goes to sleep and it wakes back up again. Refolds and unfolds, refolds and unfolds. And another thing, don't forget, you go from positive to negative, everything polarizes positive to negative. Then more than likely, with each lifetime, male to female, male to female. If the universe is consistent, I think it is. And if you're wise, if you're careful, because you can remember conscious moments in your life, can't you? You can remember moments when you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a bigger space than just this little body right here. You become fully aware of everything around you. And if you quiet yourself, you can think about those things. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm crazy or there's reincarnation or anything, but we know that energy does not die.
In the following minutes, Michael Tellinger and Dr. Leonard Horowitz will explain the hidden knowledge of vibration and the universe. Please pay close attention. Your mind will be blown away.
We live in an electromagnetic universe. This is what we are told, where everything spins and vibrates. And the electromagnetic universe is actually a subtle deception. You'll understand as we go. It's a very subtle deception, a very important subtle deception, because it's not the electromagnetic universe that we live in. It's the magneto-electric universe that we live in. And just twisting those two around would have given us a very different perception while we grow up about the world that we live in and the universe and this reality of us. If we don't think of it as the electromagnetic but the magneto-electric. Huge consciousness shift in growing up with that kind of thinking. Everything has its own specific frequency, as we mentioned before. Prime resonance frequency. Everything vibrates at its own frequency. That's how we can manipulate things with frequency and sound and resonance. All comes to the same thing when you start breaking it down. Sound and resonance are also the common links of all creation. In Christianity, we have the Word. We have the Om in Hinduism, the Egyptians that sang the universe into creation. And my favorite, the Aboriginals that believe the world was sung into creation with 3 sacred songs, or brought into creation with 3 sacred songs, which is the equivalent to the Holy Trinity. And we start seeing the whole important structure of music and resonance and chord structures, harmonic resonance in music. We get the 6 days of creation very obviously become visible in sacred geometry. And the 6 aspects of Om show us cymatic patterns, and the 6 aspects of the all-seeing eye of Horus show us 6 very obvious resonating ratios that tell us that all these ancient cultures understood sound, resonance, and frequency, and it's encoded in all the things that they did. Sound is the source of all creation, and it's all about coherence and harmonic resonance. Even in our bodies, if the cells of our body are not in coherent harmonic resonance, our cells are in dis-ease, in disease, and that's why we get sick. And if we're not resonating with the earth frequencies, the natural earth frequencies of Gaia, we are in dis-ease with the Mother Earth that we live on and walk on, and that's why we get sick. Hans Jenny's beautiful documentary called Cymatics in the 60s will show you exactly how sound is pretty much behind everything in creation. We've already looked at sound manifesting in physical form. This is the quickest and easiest way for us to comprehend, once again, how this untouchable, invisible thing called sound can manifest in physical form. That little thing on the metal plate, with the sand on the metal plate on that video. That's just probably the quickest way for us to say, okay, sound can manifest physical shapes. And sound also inspired religious symbols, because the guys that created the religious symbols know all this stuff. These guys knew all this stuff, and they know they're all connected to the ancient bloodlines. And some of these beautiful images of the cymatic patterns, when you drill into it, you get that perfect cross in a circle of the source of the sound. And that's it. The source of the sound is this beautiful cross in a circle, and this is why most of the religious movements have the cross in a circle as their symbol, recognizing that the source of everything in creation is sound, the sound of the Creator. Sound and resonance that does everything you can imagine. Creates light, levitates, boils water, creates DNA. Sound heals and destroys pathogens, moves beyond the speed of light. And we have hypersound and laser and Saser technology, not laser, sound lasers, Saser. Sound makes things invisible, energizes the water we drink, so the water actually heals us, and it also energizes the air that we breathe so that we can actually survive from the air that we breathe. Otherwise, we would not survive from the air that we breathe if it wasn't for sound. And very importantly, sound is the precursor to electromagnetism, not the other way around. Sound causes electromagnetism. This is a big one for us to come to terms with. Ancient civilizations understood all this, and they used sound and frequency as a source of energy in every possible way. They used sound and frequency to control humanity, and it seems that they were focusing for some reason on our pineal gland. They had to destroy our pineal gland, and the more you study this, the more you realize why that was critical, because it seems that our pineal gland was that third eye so many of us are aware of, or we keep calling it our third eye, that connected us to everything in creation and allowed us to pick up the frequencies and the invisible, untouchable, unfathomable stuff through the third eye and actually be able to communicate telepathically with everything and everyone and interact not only with other beings, with other entities and beings and animals and trees and rocks because of our third eye. That thing there is the magic part of our body and our anatomy that's been completely destroyed. It seems from all these images that they took a lot of time and effort to destroy our pineal gland, and they continue to do so today, as you are aware of. And they used cone-shaped tools to do this. This is a key thing here. Clearly see the cone-shaped tools, and this is a repetitive theme all the time, and the pineal gland, and also, by the look of it, the DNA. That is obviously the code that creates the pineal gland in our anatomy eventually. And sound and frequency. Notice the magnetic wrist watch here. And I'm giving the game away here because I'm telling you what that is. There is a cone. This guy's holding a cone in his hand. Very important cone-shaped tool that he's doing some function with. And there's another cone here on his arm. At first you think, oh, it's just an interpretation of the guy's muscle. No, it's a cone. It's a perfect cone that feeds into this magnetic wrist watch. And you'll know why that's a magnetic wristwatch very soon. And the same kind of control through using frequency and sound and magnetism and electromagnetism that was used in ancient times, the all-seeing eye of Horus, it's still being used by the broadcast companies today. It's encoded in their logos. It's everywhere around us. But we're just too blind to see it. Sound as a tool and technology, very important. Sound creates light. Even this, you attach a LED light to a speaker and you put a speaker in a noisy place, you light the little LED up. That's spectacular. So it works both ways, light and sound. Every sound frequency has a light frequency, and every light frequency has a sound frequency attached to it. Corey Good, in a recent interview, said that he was in some giant underground cavern somewhere, and there was this invisible source of light. And when he asked, where does the light come from? He was told the light was being created by the sound. In Egypt, the ankh was used for healing. That was just a resonating device, sound frequency resonating for healing. The Native American medicine wheel is clearly just a cross in a circle as a source of all things, so from sound to heal people. Royal Rife, the man who cured all disease in 1931, he did that with sound and resonance and frequency. Spectacular achievement in curing cancer in the wards. This is his handwritten book that I had the privilege of seeing. It's in a private library in Sedona, Arizona. There's about 700 pages in there, I think, and they are page after page with his own handwritten frequencies for all the different diseases. One of my biggest, most exciting obsessions at the moment, and if there are people in this room who can do this, please go away and do this. You know that honey lasts forever. It doesn't go off. It's not affected by viruses, bacteria, pathogens. It's one of those miraculous things. Apparently, the reason that honey does that is because of the frequencies of the bees' wings when they're building their honeycombs and when they're creating and bringing in the honey. So it's a frequency of the bee's wings that creates the hexagonal structure of honeycombs. It's also interesting is that the hexagonal structure is a structure of oxygenated and structured water that cures disease. This is really important. If any one of you can go and record the frequency of bees in a beehive, the buzzing of the bee's wings, and you take that frequency to a biochemistry lab and you expose a petri dish of viruses, bacteria and fungus to the frequency of the bee's wings, I suspect that that frequency will kill the bacteria. George Lakhovsky's multiple wave oscillator is a spectacular device with which he cured his father, listen carefully, he cured his father of quadriplegia. You don't cure people of quadriplegia. His father was admitted with quadriplegia into the hospital. 6 weeks later, he walked out on crutches. The way he treated him is every day he walked in there with a little small handheld portable multiple wave oscillator from George Lakhovsky and treated him for about 45 minutes up and down his spine, after which he exposed him color light therapy for another hour. He did this for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. His father walked out on crutches. I saw the hospital report. It says, Mr. So-and-so exhibited a remarkable recovery. Spectacular. They just won't go there. They will not be, engaged in any explanation. In 2011, Anthony Holland, this is now, in a TED Talk, show us which frequencies kill cancer cells. Very briefly, okay, he tells us between 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz kills cancer cells. And he shows us in a TED Talk.
We now know that cancer is vulnerable between the frequencies of 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz. So now we attack leukemia cells. Leukemia cell number 1 tries to grow a copy of itself, but the new cell is shattered into dozens of fragments and scattered across the slide. Leukemia cell number 2 then hyperinflates and also dies. Leukemia cell number 3 then tries to make another cancer cell. The new cell is shattered and the original cell dies.
Magnetrons obviously generate huge amounts of energy, and that's just sound. It's a resonant cavity magnetron that's used in laser beams, laser technology, microwaves, all use magnetrons for that technology. Sound acts as a cloak of invisibility. There's so much new information about this, opens a whole new chapter and debate. There's very advanced new sound cloaking technology right now available. This plastic 3D acoustic pyramid acts as an acoustic cloak, make things invisible when you put it underneath it, when you expose that pyramid to specific sound frequencies. And that pyramid is reminiscent of what? Is reminiscent very strongly of Eastern architecture. Sound creates hurricanes. In 2003, these guys lodged a patent to create hurricanes with sound. And then here's another one. Sound creates supercluster galaxies. The lower the frequency, the larger the cymatic shape. Now you've got a frequency that's 57 octaves lower than middle C, rumbling away from a supermassive black hole in the Perseus cluster in the key of B flat, creating a supercluster galaxy. And it's amazing. This is apparently an image of it. I like the one on the left because when you watch Hans Jenny's cymatics documentary, that looks identical to the images of lycopodium powder on a metal plate. This is insane. So you start to get the idea of as above, so below. There's no end. This is what really disturbs me. The fact that we could put out fire with sound, and yet this has not been employed or used anyway. Why? Because it's not good for business. Remember, the moment we stop the growth and the need for money, the entire global financial system collapses. This is just spectacular. These kids developed this little resonator that puts out a fire. 5 seconds. Count it from the moment they put it down to the frying pan to when the fire is out. 5 seconds. Imagine the fire trucks arriving at a burning building. The ladders go up, and instead of fire hoses, a bunch of speakers get switched on and put out this frequency. That fire in the building will be out in literally a few seconds or a minute. The entire fire, everywhere, because it'll resonate right through the building. That's not going to happen, because that's going to save a lot of money.
Be attached to a drone, and that would be applied to forest fires or even building fires where you wouldn't want to sacrifice
5 seconds. Sound energizes the air we breathe, and this is how we actually oxygenate our bodies and our lungs, or through our lungs, the blood in our veins and our arteries rather. Air that you breathe makes a bloody noise, and it goes into your lungs, and it goes into the smaller and smaller orifices as it moves into your lungs. So it speeds up and speeds up and speeds up, and it goes higher and higher and creates these frequencies. And it's the energy and the sound of the air that you breathe that actually energizes the oxygen in the air. So that oxygen is buzzing as it's moving faster and faster. By the time it reaches your alveoli and it goes from the lungs into the arteries, that oxygen in the air is buzzing and energized from the sound. And that's when it goes into your blood, and it's used in the blood. And when it's stripped of the vibrating energy, you breathe it out again. And it just repeats that cycle. And that's how we energize the oxygen that we breathe. They don't teach you this at medical school. In 2011, Luc Montagnier spontaneously generated DNA by exposing a tube of water to certain sound frequencies that had the frequencies of a DNA in it and constituted DNA in an empty test tube with sound. Now you start understanding how we can start cloning other species and other creatures just by sound and vibration. And then obviously sonoluminescence, the star in a jar. God said, "Let there be light," a bubble with brilliant light inside a body of water. Is it possible that all the star systems that we see out there are actually just giant bubbles of light in a never-ending mass of water? I don't know.
The following content will challenge everything you thought you knew. Take a look.
Your DNA is an antenna to the Creator that operates like a Tesla coil because of the creative juice in you, water.
The vibration of water around the double helix of the completed human DNA creates a vibrational antenna. And now when you hit that with light energy, it vibrates at a very specific frequency.
When we placed these 3 E's on people's acupressure points and then took those energy readings using that instrumentation, between 80 and 85% of the time, we always saw one organ system, one energy meridian, consistently enhanced, the pineal gland, the spiritual processing station.
Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Next, Dr. Leonard Horowitz explains the mysterious connection between the numbers 3, 6, and 9 in the human DNA. It is mind-blowing.
The entire universe is spinning, just like your DNA, your genetics. And it's spinning as the mathematics is dictating. The numbers themselves are a tip-off. Let me give you the fundamental, the rudimentary origin of the numbers. Here it is. The most important numbers, 3, 6s, and 9s. Again, Tesla, who created a Tesla coil. Tesla coils, energy amplifiers. Your DNA is an energy amplifier, a coil, operating by the 3, 6s, and 9s primarily. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you've probably looked at engines or motors, magnets that have been wound with copper wire. When you do that, when you wind the copper, coil the copper around the magnet, it enhances the energy dramatically. That's what your DNA is. It's an antenna to the creator. Technically, the scientists call it photon-phonon emissions for intercellular communications. That's the primary function of DNA. Phonon is sound. Photon is light. So sound and light signaling. And before there was light, there was the water and the sound. So sound and light signals come into the cells, and DNA is in a matrix of water. Your DNA is an antenna to the creator that operates like a Tesla coil because of the creative juice in you, water. Specifically, most frequently, the matrix of DNA is the 6-sided hexagonal shaped structured water molecule. And this is from science that Lee Lorenzen shared with me, and he shared with Dr. Emoto. This is from the journal Science. This is from Ron Sakely's team, University of California, Berkeley, water scientists, who took DNA and evaluated how much energy potential is held in the genetic strands, and then changed the structured water matrix. They pulled the water out of the matrix and then rechecked to see if the strands were still spiritually or energetically active. And so here you can see 4 strands of DNA in that beautiful Tesla coil structure. Here particularly you can see, if you lay this on its side, you see the structure of the double wing in Rodin's infinity pattern. And here you see negative 212, here is negative 217 as an energy measure. If they eliminated as little as 8% of the structured water out of the matrix, you lose the structure. It unfolds, and look at what happens to the energy signaling. Negative 12.3 goes down dramatically. Praying over water to have a dramatic effect. Dr. Emoto's greatest contribution, that you can take muddied water like this. This is actually 20,000 magnification of water that is consistent with all of the municipal water systems, all the fluoridated and chlorinated water systems that the public health officials allegedly give us to protect us. In fact, they're simply poisoning us. At the highest levels, it is absolutely certain that there's no need for this. You think about this. We now know that the most expensive, and they're the most expensive and most effective of all of the water purification systems in the industry, is ultraviolet light. The frequency resonance kills the pathogens. How expensive would it be for us to really install all that type of technology for mass municipal water systems? It really wouldn't be that significantly expensive. There would be certainly ways to reduce the cost, to make it cost effective, cost beneficial. But instead, what are we doing? We're poisoning the system, poisoning God, poisoning the triune God, poisoning the water, poisoning the bloodstreams of humanity. That's sick. That's not public health. That's genocide. And so the concept that you could take the worst impure water and with faith and trust and loving, heartfelt intent, dramatically change it, purify it. Truth that shall set us free from environmental toxicity.
When it comes to water, have you ever thought that cats have something special? They're always drawn to flowing water, be it from a faucet, toilet or shower. They don't drink water that has been sitting in a bowl for 2 days. Let's listen to Aubrey Marcus and Dr. Zach Bush talking about the science behind all of that. This is very, very interesting.
The cats have taught me something else, because I could pour this Mountain Valley water and I could pour it in a dish, and I leave that dish flat and leave it there for 2 days. They will not touch that water. But I've flushed the toilet. I've flushed the toilet and the water's swirling. They'll choose that water that's been circulating and cycling or alive, they prefer it out of the faucet, but they'll take the toilet. But alive, it's like living water. It's like they can sense that there's something different about the water as it's alive, as it's moving, and there's something happening there.
What's happening at the atomic level that you're witnessing there is clumping. And so when you have stagnant water or water that goes through non-natural flow states, if you put a 90-degree bend in a plumbing line, which there's thousands in every single household, all those 90-degree turns break it out of normal flow state and you get clumping of the water molecules. And so coming out of the tap or sitting in a glass of water that you just poured, typically you've got clumps of 75 to 100 water molecules that are clumped together. And they're in an electrical relationship to each other, a biochemical kind of colloidal structure. When you put it into a natural vortex around a pebble in a stream or swirling in that toilet bowl, as you described, that vortex energy that's there, it breaks that organization of those large clumps, and you can get down to levels of 5, 12 molecules of water, which is now far more biologically active, can be absorbed through cell membranes much better, all of that. So we have certainly learned to kill water through every mechanism that we do in municipal water systems and hydraulics around all of our water systems. But interestingly, as soon as water passes into a cell, which remains one of the most mysterious things in biology, we still don't really know how water gets into a cell because we just have these passive channels called aquaporins in the surface of cells that have no pump mechanism. We have pumps for everything else: sodium, potassium, minerals, insulin. Like, we have all kinds of ways to get crap into cells. Water being the most important thing for cellular health, we can't figure out how that thing knows how to passively push through a cell. There's no way to suck it in, but it seems to be related to the electrical potential across the cell membrane. So like a battery, the more you insulate between the positive and negative charge, the higher the potential energy there. And so it's by creating this extraordinary charge potential across a very small distance of a cell membrane with perfect resistance through that phospholipid double membrane, you create an enormous electrical charge potential. And it's thought that it's the electrical charge potential that's being produced by the mitochondria as it translates light energy from your food back into light energy, electrons, is creating the electrical opportunity for water to enter the cell. And when it enters, it immediately crystallizes. When you've cut yourself, you've never leaked water out of yourself, which is so weird because you're 70% water.
Well, what do you mean? What's blood?
Blood is not from the cell, right? So you'll have blood, which is a liquid state, but it's outside of the cell. When you cut yourself, you'll disrupt millions, if not billions of human cells, skin cells, deep dermis, all of this. No water leaks out. And so you're cutting through massive amounts of tissue. Heart surgery is just so dramatic. And there is no leak. There's no water there because it's not a liquid state. It's actually in this fourth phase of water, which looks like a dense jello. And what it is, miraculously, is a crystalline structure of that H2O. And that crystalline structure lines up along the DNA of the strand of the virus or the human DNA that you receive from mom and dad to create an antenna system. And so the vibration of water around the double helix of the completed human DNA creates a vibrational antenna. And now when you hit that with light energy, it vibrates at a very specific frequency. And I believe that what gives you the ability to wake up every day thinking you're Aubrey and not me is not actually a cognitive process. It's actually a vibrational event where you always know. And if somebody came along and said, your name's not actually Aubrey, your parents lied to you, your name's Phil, that's no problem for you because you say, all right, I'm actually Phil, but you haven't lost track of who you are at that biologic level because you're still the same frequency of resonance.
Right.
No, there's an awareness of self. There's a coherence of memory of your body that's held at the water structure and its resonance around the DNA strand. Memory is all in the water. We've never found a database in the brain or peripheral nervous system that allows for long-term memory. We have short-term memory in the hippocampus, which is a tiny little, size of an almond in the side of the brain. That's where we do short-term memory processing into long-term memory, but it disappears into this black box of long-term memory. We don't know where the hell that's happening in the neurology side, but we know through water structure that water carries memory at the molecular level in an exquisite state. And, there's been bizarre abilities now to look at atomic structure to understand vibrational input. There's a TED Talk, I think 10 years back or something like that maybe, but that showed how, I think it was a Stanford group, had been able to reproduce a conversation that happened in a room with a bag of chips, an open bag of chips, and they studied the atomic structure shift in the bag of chips to recreate the vibrational input that would have happened to create those, before and after events of the atomic structure of the chip bag, and then show that can be then translated back into voice.
This is how it went down. Mary had a little lamb. Little lamb, little lamb.
But ridiculous as this experiment looks, it was actually really important because we were able to recover this sound.
That's mind-blowing even to fathom. I don't even think I even understand it.
Nobody really does. The point being, vibration affects structure, and the memory of water is in this interface between the crystalline structure of the gel state of water in our cells and that electrical vibration from sunlight, from food, translation into energy, all of these things.
At the beginning of this video, you heard Dr. Leonard Horowitz mention the 3E patches that activate the pineal gland when applied to acupressure points. Let's hear the full explanation.
I came up with these little energy patches, stickers and Klingons called the 3E, or the water energizers. And what it was is simply the perfect circle of sound. The initial patch, you know how Dr. Emoto recommends putting love and thanks on water? It changes the resonance, the words and letters and the intent, mostly the loving intent, because you're so powerful. Because the energy is in your heart. The intelligence is in your heart. Your heart's in communion with Creator. So that the energy of the positive, loving intent, like you heard Dr. Pearson say, that, you know, in a laboratory miles away, if you start exercising, your heart cells are going to reflect that miles away, or you're going to have this intelligent communication into the water, which is the blessed creative juice. We all know, those of us who have any sense of reasonableness and faith, that prayer works. How does it work? Because there's a loving, heartfelt intent to do good. And that loving, heartfelt intent is connected directly to the musical mathematical matrix in the source. And so the concept of taking the sacred geometry and mathematics of the musical divinity, putting it into the image of a perfect circle of sound, putting 528 highlighted at the center, putting love and thanks. Now you can see how I came up with this. You don't need a rocket scientist degree to realize it. And so what Dr. Emoto did was he took it back to Japan, sent it to Japan, and you know there's messages in water. He's the researcher who has three New York Times bestsellers now. One is called The Message in Water. The other is called The Hidden Messages in Water. And he takes under 20,000 magnification, crystalline flash prose in water that's been prepared for 12 hours with whatever you're trying to see if it has some sort of a change in structuring or a message in the water. This was one of the beautiful crystals that he sent me back that gets created by the 3E, which when we tested it on the electrodermal machinery, you know, there's little electrodes you can put on your skin and it runs into machines, which diagnoses how much energy is coming out of certain acupuncture meridians. And then the most sophisticated ones can actually do a very amazing analysis of everything. I mean, the most advanced units today can do 9,000 tests in 2 minutes. Tell you everything that you've forgotten about your birth, about everything. And then because it's frequency, it's all energy, they can flip. Again, like cures like. So if you've got a wave, let's say, that's going in this direction causing disease or too much amplitude or too much energy here, you hit it with the opposite, equal and opposite to cancel it out. Real simple. It's based on what I showed you. Creative technology, word, sound, frequency, mathematics, resonance, waveforms, and the technology based on that. This, by the way, is one of the beautiful crystals that Dr. Emoto showed. You know, we pray over water. How about a message in the water that the water's praying for us? Here you have a water molecule, a massive amount. Actually, this is about 1 million water molecules that came together in a specific shape to deliver a message to humanity, which is we're praying for you to get it together. And interestingly enough, when we placed these 3Es on people's acupressure points and then took those energy readings using that instrumentation, between 80 and 85% of the time, we always saw one organ system, one energy meridian, consistently enhanced, the pineal gland, the spiritual processing station.
All this information has kind of shaken my world. I wonder if the water we drink daily is good or not so good for us. I started looking for information about the best drinking water, and I found this video with Dr. Gabriel Cousins, a holistic physician and spiritual teacher known for integrative approaches to health.
What's the best quality water? And you heard me use the term biologically active water. So what is that? Water's a problem today because it's so radioactively contaminated. I'll just say fluoride is carcinogenic. In fluoride areas in the US, people live less long, have more hip fractures, and incidentally, they do not have any less cavities. That's a whole mythology got created. Fluoride also calcifies your pineal gland, which is actually pretty important. It creates emotional imbalance and makes at least women infertile. Accelerates the aging process significantly into metabolic poison. 1 milligram or more is associated with cancer. Not a good thing. So, okay, but you have all these contaminants in the water. What to do? What to do? Aside from really fresh spring water, which most people don't have access to, the best thing is either water distillation or reverse osmosis. But now, with the amount of radiation, I'm more strongly recommending water distillation because the radioactive nucleotides, when you distill the water, evaporate out. With reverse osmosis, they don't evaporate out, they're still going to stay in the water. With water distilling, you get out the most of everything. From my opinion, distilled water is actually an aggressive water and a dead water. So in a gallon, or basically 4 liters, I will put a pinch of highly active salt. That will give you 50 parts per million, which is a really nice mineral content. That's just step 1. The next thing is, been disorganized as a water, you have to structure it to hold energy. Water holds energy. What's available here is a thing called crystal energy, which is microcrystal clusters that structure the water. There's more sophisticated machines coming out that structure it more potently, called the GIA machine, GIA, which you can get in the United States. We sell at the tree. So the crystal energy is good, and you put 25 drops per gallon in. Now we've structured it. We have minerals to hold the structure, and now you want to energize it. So you take a wooden spoon and stir it to make a vortex, and it pulls energy into the water. Go in both directions. So now we've energized it, we've structured it, we've mineralized it, and all that's left is one more thing for you to personally bless it, because water holds your blessing. That research is there. You bless your water, and now you have really good water. And it's not expensive. A lot of the water in the bottles is very hyped, and it comes in plastic bottles, which is not good for you. You want to store your water in the glass bottles. What we do is we put a tachyon disc underneath to keep the water energized. Now you have the highest quality water at a very, very inexpensive price, and you're in control. You actually know what's in the water.
That's it for today. Hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching.